Good morning. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to introduce our speaker on behalf of the Chancellor, who will be joining us shortly from an agency heads meeting and will be closing us out today. I do want to just offer a few thoughts on why the University System of Georgia is so committed to upholding an ethical culture. And, the university system and all of our campuses and organizations that are attached to us, they're really integral to the state. We create, we transfer, and apply knowledge that's really fundamentally valuable by itself, but also improves our graduates' quality of life and helps to make this state more economically competitive and really just improve our quality of life. But of course, we do this as a public agency and as a publicly supported institutions of higher education. The state and its citizens invest in us, so we can further our mission of preparing students for life and work with a college degree, which makes us accountable to Georgia taxpayers and stakeholders, as well as to students and to families. With that, I'm incredibly honored to welcome our speaker, who will share more about how and why ethics are so important for all of us in the University System of Georgia. Former Chief Justice Harold Melton served 16 years on the Supreme Court of Georgia, including nearly 3 years as the court's Chief Justice, before joining the law firm of Troutman Pepper earlier this year as a partner in their Atlanta office. He has a long record in public service, including as executive counsel for Governor Perdue and as an assistant attorney general for the state of Georgia. Justice Melton is also now one of us, having a few weeks ago been named as the Carl E. Sanders Chair in Political Leadership at UGA School of Law, which is the same place he earned his law degree. I do have to say he happens to have a bachelor's degree from Auburn, but we don't hold that against him. That is because more than most, Justice Melton understands how courage and making brave choices creates a legacy of service. Auburn University last year renamed its Student Center for him, in part to honor his role as an undergraduate who became the university's first Black president of the Student Government Association. I hope and know he will inspire you, and I encourage you to listen to him. I also want to thank you on behalf of our leadership and the Board of Regents for all that you do to support the great work of your colleagues and the system every day. And Justice Melton, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Dr. Fuqua, for those very warm words. I want to thank Teresa McCartney for the invitation, and Wesley Horney. It is an honor to be here to talk about what I think is a very honorable role of service, and that is service in public service and to the citizens of the state of Georgia in particular. I'm told that the Braves won the World Series last night. So that satisfies one objective. One is I want to have one cheap applause line, but two, word of advice. I've been an Atlanta sports fan for a long time. I've seen Atlanta teams lose when I thought it was impossible to lose. I'm not celebrating until the plane hits the tarmac at Hartsfield. I'm still holding out, but I'm hopeful. I'll say that much. I love public officials. I love state employees. One of the experiences I had when I was working in the governor's office, people would come and they would come and meet and talk about problems they were having with one agency or another. And I would ask them, so what are the agency heads telling you? What are the reasons they are giving you why they aren't giving you what you're saying you so desperately need and you're entitled to? And if they gave me the answer that said, well, they're just being a bunch of bureaucrats, well, that didn't sit well with me because I am a bureaucrat. I've worked in state government for 30 years, and I have come to know and work alongside of people who did hard work day in, day out, and were dedicated and faithful and thoughtful and cared about the mission. And so I needed a lot more layers than there being a bunch of bureaucrats. If that's all you're going to tell me, then you're going to make me work to figure out what the real answer is. I'm going to assume that there's an answer you just don't want to share with me. And so that never really helped me much. And so I've always fully appreciated the honor of public service. And I'm gonna build up to where that honor, I think, comes from and where it leads to. But it's going to take some time for me to get there. So I hope you'll bear with me. So let me tell you how I became interested in public service. I grew up in East Point, went to high school in Marietta, and was really involved in sports and school activities. Went to Auburn University. We're on the quarter system there. My first quarter at Auburn University, I really didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it. And it took me a while to figure out why. And the reason why was ultimately because I really didn't feel connected. And I didn't feel connected because I wasn't involved in anything. And so I got involved in student government, and my first role in student government was as an administrative assistant, which meant that I would go in there and address envelopes. That's when you actually had to put things in the mail to get from A to B, and you addressed envelopes, just really mundane and ministerial work. And then you kind of earned the right to have more responsibility later years. But I was at least around the people that were involved in doing stuff. And I was involved with those people who were involved with doing stuff. And that meant a lot to me. It provided context and comfort and maybe discomfort depending on what I saw. But that level of connectivity was very important for me. So that's why I got involved in student government. And in that process, I learned a lot about myself, which is for me to feel at home and at peace with what's going on, I need to know kind of who is in the mix, who's doing what. I need to be close to the action. I don't necessarily need to be in the action, just around it. And so I describe my work in the Attorney General's office as kind of being in the bleachers, watching the actors and advising from time to time. And then, of course, when you go in the governor's office, you're kind of out of the bleachers, you're in the field. And then on the Supreme Court, you're more like the referee. So this is an analogy that just won't end, folks. So for me, there was somewhat selfish reasons in that there's a desire for connectivity. Maybe there's some control issues. I don't know. Maybe that's between me and my therapist. But there's a lot of reasons why that motivated me for public service. So there may be other reasons why you came into public service. Maybe it's because you grew up in a world where they said, hey, you go out and get you that government job. And you go and punch that clock, get you 25, 30 years in and make it to retirement. Maybe you had real idealistic expectations, hopes and dreams about serving, and you came at it from a purely altruistic standpoint. Every now and then, we all know this, we see people go into government service because they have this desire for glory and status and leadership. I talked to a young man last night. He said, I want to be mayor of Atlanta. And I've talked to a lot of people who want to be mayor of Atlanta, governor or whatever. But there's a lot of reasons why we go into this. But regardless of why you go into, how you came to your role in doing what you're doing, there's certain things that are common to all of us, and were common to all of us. And one of those is that there's something that's mundane about your job. Regardless of how you came to it, what your motivations were, when you get into the job and you show up at 8:05, 9:05, whatever it is, shut the door, there's something that's mundane about the job. So when I was at Auburn, I had a summer job. And my summer job was working at the deli. And I loved working at the deli. It was a lot of fun. But when there's a rule that when you didn't have anything to do, you didn't have a lot of customers, you had to find something to do to make yourself useful. And there are a lot of things you could do to make yourself useful, but the one thing you didn't want to do was fold pizza boxes. Nobody liked folding pizza boxes. And if the boss walked in, they saw you standing around and you couldn't find anything else to do, and they said, look at those pizza boxes that need to be folded. And I realized that every job I had, even in the Attorney General's office, even in the governor's office, even on the Supreme Court, every job I had pizza boxes. Every job I had. When I was in the governor's office, responding to citizen complaints, those are pizza boxes. We didn't have anything else to do. All these citizen letters that get piled up, you got to respond to those. Pizza boxes. The governor's office was probably the most fun I would ever have in the workplace. I can't tell you how much time we spent on figuring out who controlled parking around the Capitol and when to lower the flag. I walked in this beautiful building, the big gold dome, and I got keys, and we're spending time on parking and things along those lines. Maybe it's budget prep, whatever it is. I don't know what it is in your field, but there is something that's not sexy about what you do that you have to do every day. And that's true with whatever it is that we're doing. And then on top of that, no matter what you do, you're going to be second guessed, right? You will be second guessed. That's just the nature of it. That's nature, not just in public service. That's the nature of any job. You're going to do the best you can. You're going to make your judgment call, and somebody's going to say, well, why'd you do that? And so, there are a lot of examples of things that really aren't particularly sexy. In my role as Chief Justice, one of the things that landed on my lap was managing the COVID response of the judiciary. When I told my mom that I was going to be sworn in as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Georgia, we didn't talk about COVID at all. When she smiled, she didn't say, well, good luck with that COVID stuff. None of that was part of our conversation. And so there's always something that you don't even want to tackle that gets landed on your desk. And, I want COVID to end. I know we all want COVID to end. And I will tell you that there were times when my day job became more of a COVID response job. And I was tired. I got tired, I got frustrated, and I would come home and have to do my court work, my day job. And the pressure every now and then of hearing a clerk in Clayton County call and say, we got employees on the ventilator, we got to shut this thing down, what do we do? That was tiring. And so I will tell you that in those moments, I gained a lot of strength by just looking at history. And when I look at history, you always have to be careful, because when you look at history, people say, oh, you're comparing yourself to. I'm not comparing myself to. I'll give you an example. I'm a very bad golfer. I love golf. I love playing. I'm horrible. I can hit a driver. I've done this. And the ball will go actually up and behind me with my driver. And people say, gosh, I didn't know that was possible. But because of my struggles in golf, I can appreciate when I see what the pros are doing. So when I say that I can appreciate Bubba Watson, let's take Bubba, because one, his name is Bubba, and that's always fun. And two, he's from Georgia. I can appreciate Bubba Watson. I'm not comparing myself to Bubba, but because I'm such a bad golfer, I can appreciate what he's doing. So you with me? So when I look at Abraham Lincoln, I'm not comparing myself to Abraham Lincoln. I'm not comparing COVID to the Civil War. But by looking at what I was dealing with and what we were dealing with, it helps me appreciate even further what was going on with Abraham Lincoln, what he had to overcome, and how he was able to do that. And, so looking at Abraham Lincoln, he was elected in 1860. And even before he was sworn in, he lost half the country to succession, even before he was sworn in. South Carolina first, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. And then 8 other states. All before his inaugural address, which was on March 4th. On March 5th, the Confederates lay siege to Fort Sumter. Now, he did not campaign to be president over the Civil War, but there he was. There was his duty to overcome the challenge that was laid before him. So how did he persevere? That's the question that I was asking, to figure out how we persevere when things get tough. When all you see is pizza boxes, big or small, how do you persevere? He had, by all accounts, the war was just a disaster. The generals, he couldn't find generals who would even engage the enemy, to engage. And when he did find generals who would engage, they weren't any good at engaging. And so everything was characterized as either an atrocity or a fiasco, but not characterized by anything good. The economy. There was literally no economy to speak of, really. All valuable resources were dedicated to the war effort, almost completely. Families, all families, including his, were at minimum split over the question of war. At worst, they were all suffering death or dismemberment. They were ripped apart. Midterm election, 5 of the most populous states went to the Democrats. So he lost ground in the northern states, so he was losing political momentum, political infrastructure. And that, of course, was a referendum on his leadership. Approval ratings. They didn't keep approval ratings back then, but can you imagine what his approval rating was? By the way, approval ratings. What is a good approval rating for a governor or a president? 50, 53, roughly. President Biden's right around 43 right now. President Obama at his height was 69-ish. Even at that, that's almost one in 3 don't want you to have your job. That's what that means. Walking into a room, realizing that 1 in 3 people would wish somebody up there besides you was up there. 1 in 3. 50% approval rating seems to be pretty good. Half the people in the room would wish that somebody other than you was up in front of them rather than you. So his approval ratings, probably single digits, if they would have kept those statistics back then. Personally, what he had to go through? Well, he had a constant fight with major depression. He had a wife that even had more serious mental health issues. She was emotionally and mentally unstable by all accounts. He had to suffer the death of one of his sons. He had cabinet infighting. And this was all throughout his first term. And so his first term of 4 years compared to 15 months that I had to deal with COVID. And so when I look at President Lincoln and I look at all that he did, this is what I saw that I thought was really important. I saw his dedication to personal growth. That's what I see, his dedication to personal growth. Now, was he on the right side of race from day one? No. But what you saw was his evolution, how he started off fighting a war for political expediency and ended up fighting a war for principle. Ultimately, he ended up fighting a war to save the slaves, free the slaves, as opposed to preserving the Union. He grew to understand and appreciate the dignity, the human dignity of all people, of all races. And what you see is he was wrapped up in a spiritual journey to know and understand God and how he related to the big picture of what was in front of him. He became a man of firm conviction, a man of dedication, dedicated to principle rather than political expediency. And so what I see there is a person dedicated to duty and a person dedicated to personal growth. And that to me is how we get past the pizza boxes that lay before us when we show up to work all day, every day. So the challenge is when we show up to work, there's a lot of reasons why we get frustrated. We get frustrated because, well, people don't appreciate us. Nobody's saying thank you for the service that we are doing. And by the way, thank you. But we get frustrated because people don't say thank you or even know that you're doing what you're doing. We get frustrated because the people who are making these big decisions really don't know what they're doing, at least in our minds. We get frustrated because, I have all these other options and opportunities, and my peers are doing so much better financially. In my 30 years of working for the state, here's the pattern that I personally experienced year in and year out. I would have an intern in law school working for me. Hey, go get me a Coke. They go get me a Coke. Next year, they start working at a law firm. They're making more money than me the very next year. 10 years later, they're inviting me to their lake house. That's the pattern, year in, year out. And so how do we persevere? How do we stick to it? Where's the honor? Well, the honor is at the end of the day, when we serve our time, when we're done serving our time. Have we been true to our duty? Have we been true to our own personal growth? Those two are interrelated. Those two are interrelated. Did y'all know that there's a code of ethics for the state of Georgia? Y'all knew that? I didn't know that. I shouldn't say that because I was the ethics officer for the state at one point. That's how I learned it. And it starts off with what you would expect. It's OCJ 4510-1. It starts off with actually what you might not expect, because it says, put loyalty to the highest moral principles and to country above loyalty to persons, party, and governmental department. So beyond governmental department, beyond the agency that you work for, beyond political party, that's really important right now, right? And beyond loyalty to persons, put loyalty to the highest moral principles and to country above all else. And I think that's what we're talking about when we look at what President Lincoln was overcoming. And so the pizza boxes that you and I deal with, some of them are really small, some of them are really big. They're all interrelated, and sometimes we lose sight of the big picture. We never see the big picture of how they are interrelated, but all people working on our pizza boxes together the right way, looking for efficiencies, looking for teamwork, looking for synergies, we do make a difference. And at the end of the day, when it's time to leave our public service, if we can say that we were dedicated to duty and dedicated to personal growth, that's where the honor comes. That's the honor of public service. And the good thing is that honor comes regardless of whether anybody ever notices. And that's the journey for us all. Thank you for what you do.
So first of all, let me please apologize that I missed the beginning. And it always happens when a governor schedules an agency head meeting. Unfortunately, he did trump you this morning, so I do apologize. But I did have an opportunity to listen to most of your words, and I thought Juanita Hicks had a great question of kind of the influence that you've had. And obviously you don't know what I'm about to say, but I've had an opportunity in state government to work with Harold Milton over the years. I'm not quite sure how I look older than you because I don't have 30 years in the state. So you apparently are doing something better than I am. But I started my career in OPB, and sitting in OPB, I always heard about Harold Milton. And throughout my career, you actually had a significant impact on my career and how I made decisions, and especially in your time in Governor Perdue's office and being able to see you interact. You did hurt my soul a little bit when you said probably your worst experience was budget, but I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you on that. But what I learned from listening to you make you laugh, that now I want to go golf with you because I may be a worse golfer than you, but it's okay because you're going to probably make me look a little pretty good. I maybe about 2 months ago, unfortunately I haven't read it yet, I ordered a book on Lincoln and his leadership and his cabinet and how do you have teams, how do you work with people. So now I'm really excited to start reading that book. I've had an opportunity to sit on the lottery board for over 8 years, and your impact at the lottery board again is still felt today. And we clearly know that we really are, as lottery, part of the executive branch. So you made that very clear in your roles. And then I just really loved the analogy around pizza boxes. And in our roles here, there are days where it feels like we probably have 1 million pizza boxes that we have to put together. But to your point, regardless of the day, regardless of the good, bad, and ugly, we really are making a difference in the lives of students and people in the state of Georgia. And you're right, we don't say thank you enough, and thank you to all of you here today for everything that you do. You know, Ethics Week is a critical week for us to really sit back and reflect on our values, and when we do walk into these offices, how we interact with people. And that's critical to always have that in the back of your mind. And you never in these positions should be put in a position where you're having to, you know, think about the ethical of should you do something or should you not. And, you know, I agree with Harold's comments around that. Always point in the right direction of what you should do. And if at any point in any of your careers, if there are issues, please come and talk to us. Because again, we want to make sure that this organization continues to move in the right direction. But just thrilled that you are here today, and thank you so much for speaking to the group.